The RAAW Madonna V3, one of the hottest bikes at the moment and with good reason. But when you look at the marketing material put out by RAAW themselves, you will see people like Hannah Steintaler just absolutely ripping it down enduro tracks. You'll see 25-year-old guys doing huge jumps, throwing tail whips, all that kind of thing. Yet, unfortunately, this is not me. This is very unrelatable to me. Yet, I also chose this frame. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my first ride impressions. I'd like to talk about what kind of components I put in it, what I chose for it, and how this feels on the trail to me after 2 weeks of pretty intense riding in a very cool spot. But before we get there, I need to take you back in time a little bit so I can give you a better picture of what kind of bike I was riding before and what type of mountain biking I do, so you have a better understanding of if this relates to you or not. The bike that led me to the Madonna is the Bird Iris AM9. A burly, long, slack, low bottom bracketed raw aluminium all-mountain monster with sealed bearings and external cable routing. Reliable, comfortable, confidence-inspiring, easy to work on, and, according to cross-country riders, too heavy. The weight didn't bother me. I'm a 30-something going on 40 guy with a job that wants to enjoy epic backcountry and rough natural trails on big, all-mountain routes. I spend multiple weeks per year pedaling up forest roads and sometimes pushing my bike for hours to then descend for over 1,000 meters or more on as much natural single track as possible. Some people would call it enduro, but my skills and speeds are so modest that I assure you I don't even think about racing. For me, the bike is an adventure tool, a thing that enables long days roaming around the mountains. More often than not, alone. I just needed to pedal well enough to get me up, but the main thing I seek is comfort and confidence when I go downhill. I need the bike to survive the punishment and be easy to work on for basic maintenance and swapping parts. So coming from the Bird, you will see that these are pretty similar, but also quite different bikes. They're both very burly, built to last raw aluminium beasts with no nonsense construction, making it very easy to maintain them, to swap components, to work on them if needed. And they feel quite different to me. Now, before I get to how this bike felt to me on the trails during these first 7-8 rides, let's talk about what kind of components I put in it. So this might help explain to you how this bike comes across to me, and maybe you're interested in knowing and what kind of components I chose for this. So this all mountain style, slow climbing, and then very moderate descending with comfort and safety in mind kind of riding style led me to the following components. So maybe let's just start with the wheels. These are Hope Fortis 35 wheels with Hope Pro 5 hubs. Now, I absolutely love the Pro 5s, and these very broad rims allow me to put on some very burly tires when I need to, and these wheels just feel absolutely bomb-proof to support my pretty heavy weight. I'm not lightweight, as I might have told you before in this intro video. Now, tire-wise, this changes considerably. So at the moment I have like trail riding tires on it, but depending on the situation I swap them over, so I'm not going to spend too much time on my tire choice because it just changes from day to day. Now, moving up from the wheels, let's come to the suspension platform. Now, this is where I splurged a little bit. I went for the Fox DHX2 with the frame option, simply because I have very good experiences with coil shocks. Coil shocks just absolutely give me all the advantages that I'm looking for, while giving me some of the disadvantages that I do not really care about, namely the weight. The weight is less of a factor because I climb slowly, I'm not doing any races. But then when I point this thing downhill, it's just so plush. It gives me so much confidence. So going for a coil shock was the no-brainer for me. Going for the Fox one, it could have been the Öhlins one. I don't know, it's kind of a subjective preference. I read some really good reviews about this shock, and then the guys at RAAW helped me choose the correct spring rate for me, which was very kind of them. They responded very quickly. So I'm still trying to find out how it feels tuning-wise. I used their tuning guide, so they have some very good information on their website on what kind of settings they advise for this shock. So this is what I've used for now, and whether or not I'll change this in the future is up in the air, but probably not, because I'm not the kind of person that knows or actually feels suspension in such a way that I would be able to tell the difference between 1 or 2 clicks. So maybe this comes later, but for now I'm just using their shock, their tune, and their recommended settings. Coming back to the front, you'll see that I got myself, I really splurged on this, a Fox 38 factory Kashima, of course. Now, am I able to tell the difference between a Kashima coating and not? Obviously not, but some of the German online web shops were having a really good sale on these, so it went between actually a RockShox Zeb, which seemed to be like the sensible, more economical choice. It would have been good enough for me, but because I got a good deal on the price, I went for the Fox 38 anyway, simply because, again, my weight, especially with a big backpack full of stuff for an all-day ride, sometimes even camera gear, because, you know, I like to film, I like to shoot. Sometimes this is quite heavy. I tend to go towards 100 kilograms, sometimes over 100 kilograms. So having these thick, stiff stanchions gives me a lot of confidence. And otherwise, this thing just performs extremely well. It receives extremely good reviews, and it's just one of these things that, they give me comfort, confidence, and honestly, it's a very good match with the DHX2, and the eye wants to be pleased as well. So it's a very subjective choice. If I was more limited by my budget, I would have gone with the Zeb, and it probably would have felt very similar to it. Now, okay, pretty expensive, very nice suspension setup for me, which adds to the weight, but gives me a lot of comfort. Now, another thing that provides comfort for me is the brakes. Now, I used to be a Shimano 4-pot guy. I used to always ride Shimano XT, and this performed almost perfectly for me, even though Shimano gets a bit of a bad rep, but these brakes always work very well for me. But going up to a new bike, I was seduced into trying something new. Now, I had to choose between the Hayes Dominion and the TRP DHR Evos, and I went for the TRP ones. If you want to know why I chose this one, you'll probably find a video just on this subject alone on my channel pretty soon. If you're watching in the future, it should be there already, so I'm not going to go too deeply into why I picked the TRPs. But these TRPs with their thick rotors, 203mm rotors, have been giving me absolutely flawless performance, absolutely bomb-proof confidence so far. So coming from Shimano XT 4-pots, going to these TRPs, feels like an upgrade, and they just add to the comfort I feel on this bike, because it gives me confidence. Then moving on, let's go to the dropper. Again, here I splurged out on something that's maybe heavy to some, but very nice to me, which is the Bike Yoke Revive 20 centimeter dropper. So it's a pretty significant dropper. And I've had this exact model for years and years, actually since 2018 on my other bikes. I have 2 of them. It just performs reliably all the time. And if it doesn't, I can just use the Revive mechanism again. If you want to see my impressions and like further explanation on what this dropper is, I should have a video on that soon. But I can 100% recommend this thing. It has just been bomb-proof. But this brings me to a point of criticism for this frame. Now, this huge dropper has 0 margin for me to be inserted. So if you look at the tube here, and this insertion rate is not deep enough in my opinion. So my 2018 bird frame was able to put this thing in all the way and even have some margin to spare. I wish that the insertion depth was deeper, because now I was almost faced with trying to go for a smaller dropper because the insertion length was just exactly there. Actually, I think that at this rate, I'm sitting slightly too high in my saddle, but so far no problems, but it was a very, very close shave. Next thing, moving on, thing I haven't talked about obviously is the this huge rocker here. This is the Rocker 65 based on my weight. So I really appreciate the fact that RAAW offers this option of going for different rockers depending on your body weight, because obviously there's a huge difference, huge range in rider weight. And for a Western European average working man body type as myself, I'm obviously not on the lighter side of the spectrum. And this really, again, gives me very nice feeling. Just the fact that these manufacturers take this into account and they say like, hey, if you're in this weight range, we have something that'll actually fine-tune the performance of the frame even more for you. Now, okay, going back down again, so we had the brakes, suspension, dropper. Let's go to the drivetrain. And this for me is just good old, bomb-proof, reliable Shimano XT. So this is obviously a 12-speed drivetrain with a Dior XT shifter up front. There's an XT derailleur at the back, but to be honest, if I were to rip it off, I have an SLX one just lying around in my car, so just having an SLX derailleur down the bottom would be perfect for me. But on my handlebars, I like to have the XT shifter because it's just so very reliable and ergonomic. I like to use very thick grips. I forgot the exact name of these ones, but I don't like to go with the standard size ones. Being 182 centimeters tall, I like to have more grip. This just gives me more comfort than the smaller ones. This is a personal preference. Then, staying at the handlebars, you might think that this is actually quite tall and I still have quite a bit of steerer tube sticking out. This is because I'm still trying to find which height should be good for me. And actually I wrote RAAW, I wrote Ruben about this, and he replied and asked him, hey Ruben, so I'm trying to find the height of my bars. So what's your opinion on, what would be the maximum amount of spacers that you recommend putting on your frame, on your design? And he came back to me and he said more or less, don't quote me on this, that he said if you need more than 2 centimeters of spacers, you're probably better off trying to use higher raised bars. But so far I have about 2 centimeters of spacers and it feels very high, plenty high to me. I'm probably going to go a little bit lower and then eventually cut down the tube. Okay, I think this concludes everything we have here up front. Then we've had the drivetrain, cool. I think that about covers it. Then talking about the cable routing, this seems absolutely fine to me. Now, installing these TRP brakes, I had my local bike shop do it to make sure that everything is nice and clean. No further remarks there. Obviously, you've watched other RAAW reviews, and these bearings are just absolutely gigantic. Probably that's to the weight of the bike. This is again not relevant to me and gives me confidence that they will last a long time. Because I have not washed the bike, this is a very clean area. Quite often the bike will be a lot more dirty, and just the fact that this is not a lightweight carbon thing with minimal seals, everything designed to cut grams in every corner, so you can say that it's 50 grams lighter than the competition. They haven't done this, and I absolutely love this. So I think I covered almost all components except for the pedals. These are Hope F22 flat pedals because I always ride with flats. I like to get on and off the bike quickly. And there's Shimano XT cranks on their 170s. I was actually looking for shorter ones. I would have liked to have tried 160s or 165s, but at this time in Europe, it's probably easier to buy a Giraffe than to buy these short pedals. They're just never in stock, nowhere. So standard 170 cranks, Hope F22 pedals, and yeah, that's about it, I guess. If you have any more questions about what's on the bike or why I picked it, please feel free to ask me in the comments. Now, this setup all together, these are exactly the components that I like. These are exactly the things that I want, chosen in form of their function. So I don't know how much this bike weighs. Actually, I literally do not want to know because again, it is not relevant to me. Everything that's on here is exactly what I want to be on there. It's never going to be a light bike, but it's going to be the thing that carries me to the biggest, roughest, solo mountain days and just give me absolute confidence. So yeah, pretty happy with what's on the bike and how I got it so far. Again, this goes over years and years, so I didn't choose this last week. This is fine-tuned from years of riding. Cool. Now that we have the components out of the way, you probably want to know how it rides, how it feels to me. And once again, we're going to see this within the framework of how my previous bike felt to me and what my use case is. So my use case is actually trail riding, all mountain riding, maybe some venturing into what some people would call enduro riding, so that kind of rough terrain, but without the racing. I'm not a racer, I'm an adventure biker. This is my adventure tool. Now, coming from this Aeris one, the Bird one, it has a shorter reach mainly, while being about as long. The reach is shorter and the stack is higher. Now, I will never pretend to be the kind of person that's able to feel like 2 millimeters of difference left or right. I will not, but what I can definitely feel is this shorter reach and this higher stack. You can immediately feel it when you're on the bike, and this bike just feels so incredibly stable and confidence inspiring because of it. Now, where I'm right now, I'm in Digne-les-Bains. This is the Alpes de Haute-Provence. So this is quite full-on mountain terrain. There's absolutely fantastic riding here. If you want to know some trails, I have complete Komoot collections. Again, this is not the topic of this video, but where I've been trying out this bike for the first time is actually pretty full-on riding. This is the limit of what I would ride. And in that riding, having this higher stack and shorter reach gives me quite a central and planted, pretty high up straight position on the bike, which when you ride it first, coming from a very long and slack bike to a more upright position, it almost feels like you're on a, like we would say in Dutch, oma fiets, grandma bike. Like you almost feel like you're on a city bike. You're like almost too up straight. This is very comfortable climbing. And even though I'm sitting more up straight, when I'm going up technical uphills or steep uphills, I have the feeling that my weight is distributed among the bike almost perfectly, because when I was riding my Bird and you're going up a steep section, going up steeply, I really need to shift my hips forward, position the saddle you know where, and actually coming down hard to really keep the weight on the front wheel. I need to do this a lot less on the Madonna. Really, my weight, again, I'm just getting stuck here. My weight can stay where it is a lot more when I'm going on steep uphills. And then when I'm going down, it just feels absolutely stable. I just drop the seat all the way in, and having this high handlebars, even on the steepest, gnarliest, loosest stuff, this bike still feels completely stable, controlled. I'm trying to find the word here. It's not complacent. Just you feel in control. It gives a very average rider such as myself. I have very mediocre riding skills. I have very mediocre confidence. This bike gives me more confidence than my Bird does. So also in loose chunk, when your bike's just bouncing all around, this thing just feels like it's staying upright, it's keeping me in place, and it's giving me confidence. Comfort and confidence, those are the two words that this bike is giving me. It is heavy, but pointing it downhill is just comfortable and gives me loads of confidence. Just all the components work very well together, and I don't know what the voodoo behind this thing is, but this very average rider such as myself is very happy with the way it behaves, even only after about as many rides as I can count on my two hands within 2 weeks. I'm still getting used to it, and it already feels so good. Now, there's some downsides to this bike, obviously, and that would be the weight, for sure. Now, being heavy is, like, you're not gonna win any uphill races, and there's quite a bit of pedal bob, unfortunately. So when I'm riding on flat surfaces, mainly roads, paved surfaces, I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all, because even firmed out, this thing will still be bobbing going on paved surfaces. So if you're going to be doing a long road climb, it's not going to feel nice. But this is not what this bike is made for, obviously. As soon as you take it off-road, as soon as you get into gravel and anything up from that, the suspension just works wonderfully. I am not suffering from any excessive pedal bob, and I'm perfectly happy climbing with it for a long time at a very moderate pace. Now, if you're curious about what the differences are with the jib, I was actually quite fortunate to meet a German guy here who was riding a jib, and I spent a big day going out riding with him, and actually carried his bike for a little bit because we were crossing a river, and carrying this Madonna V3 with my setup and then carrying his jib, I could definitely feel there was a very substantial weight difference between the jib and the Madonna. Seeing him ride, I would imagine that jib is very well equipped to do almost anything, but a heavy guy like myself going into rough terrain gets comfort and confidence from this Madonna. Anyway, I've gone on for long enough, and I hope that this has given you a realistic impression of what it is like to choose a bike like this as a person like me. 30-something going on 40, guy with a job that likes to ride epic all-mountain trails at a very modest speed. And for that, I'm very happy with my purchase choice. Cool, that's it. Now, let me know what you think. I'm very curious about your opinions about everything that I might have done differently or what you would prefer. I'm very happy with a like and a comment, and maybe I'll see you on a different video.